As an avid thrifter, okay, as somebody who will raid the joint bit by bit, piece by piece, coat hanger by coat hanger, I do not care if it's not black, I will dye it black or it will be repurposed. I cannot stand it when I see the cutest design on a little baby tee and realize that the fabric is not only paper thin, the design may have been stolen by a small artist over on Twitter, and boom, fast fashion label attached to the tag at a price where it really doesn't make sense. I mean, as thrifters yourselves, have you not seen the utter uptick in fast fashion flooding the floors at your local thrift? Honestly, it's an epidemic at this point. I'm calling it here. Drama Queen said it first. Around 5 or 6 years ago at this point, I did not see half as much fast fashion taking up space inside of a thrift store as it is today. Not to mention the fact that I am constantly driving past Brotherhood bins, you know, those big donation bins or the ones that you put stuff in and then you shut the, thingamabob. They are full to the brim of half-thought purchases by people who, I guess, are just constantly following micro trends on social media. Like, it is such a problem. I'm literally talking flooded to the point when nothing can fit in these bins, so people just dump their shit as they please in front of it. And today, I am going to be discussing why I personally think that thrift stores should just really start turning away fast fashion clothes.
Hey, guess how much they're selling Shein t-shirts for at the thrift store? Guess. I bet you won't guess. $13. $13 for Shein at the thrift store. Shein at the thrift store. Oh my god. I know $13 isn't a lot, but for Shein at the thrift store? Shein. That's the second thrift store I've been to this week where it was Shein overload, so I just had to leave. But $13 for Shein. Shein. Isn't it $4 on the Shein website? I should have pulled up a picture of them and it's this much cheaper. I can't take it anymore. Why is there so much Shein in the thrift stores?
A lot of thrifts these days are price gouging as the popularization of thrifting grows. You could argue the fact that it's inflation and that the economy is struggling, therefore thrifts are having to raise their prices. But that doesn't make any sense because it doesn't explain why most thrifts who act for charity, that's entire business model is to collect donations from people for free, mind you, to then go on to sell, but is selling fast fashion for more than it's worth. Also taking into consideration that more people are donating more things these days. And over the past couple of years, resellers have been kind of the talking point as to why thrift stores are constantly raising their prices. But considering resellers do have to buy the item and thrifts just get it for free, it quite literally makes a huge difference in the profit margins. What this means is either thrifts are price gouging to make as much money as possible off of the unknowing individual, or not even taking a quick gander into what the worth of an item is. Take fast fashion brands, for example. Like this TikToker said, $13 for an item of clothing really isn't all that much. I would personally say that that's a bit cheap. But the item of clothing is being sold at a thrift as well as it being Shein. And I'm sorry, I highly doubt that the original price of this item of clothing was $13 on Shein. This isn't just a once-off occurrence though. I am constantly seeing not just Shein, but Fashion Nova, Pretty Little Thing, Boohoo, priced really unreasonable to the point where there is no justifiable reason to purchase second-hand fast fashion. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Is to give a new and loving home to this second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand, whatever piece of clothing. But it's come to a point where even these clothes are inaccessible and sometimes just unattainable in general due to the price. I really do not have a problem with people purchasing secondhand fast fashion clothes in general because you are awesome and you are giving a second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever possible life to something that was going to eventually end up in landfill anyways. And we'll get into a little bit why, but I mean, it's quite obvious a lot of these clothes break, they disintegrate really fast, and so they have no other option but to be chucked in the bin by the consumer. I mean, almost $12 for a secondhand fast fashion item that's probably going to disintegrate after one wash is predatory to say the very least. It's also really annoying whenever you find something that looks cute but feels like utter itchy shite and you see somebody has cut the tag off and priced it at like, what, $20, because even they themselves are aware that this is not going to resell. People are less likely to buy fast fashion secondhand as they wouldn't even consider buying it brand new. And they're essentially just exploiting the consumer based off of another person's actions. I mean, sounds super familiar, doesn't it? Capitalist society, am I right? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna be a hater on this thrift store. If you know this thrift store, it is filled with fast fashion. Probably over 85% of it is from Princess Polly, O Polly, all of those type of brands. Nothing wrong with those brands at all. I think they have the cutest stuff ever. It's just that when I go thrifting, I don't expect the thrift store to be filled with just like racks of the same exact dress and the same exact styles.
Unfortunately, for the most part, the majority of fast fashion brands overproduce clothing to the point where they themselves cannot move that product. Therefore, they need to dispose of it in the most appropriate and ethical way possible. What's funny is these brands could very well easily just dump all of that clothing into landfill, because it's not like people really care all that much about a moral standpoint when purchasing fast fashion. Because, I mean, just take this statistic for example. You hear so many people who are like, don't buy fast fashion, don't buy fast fashion. So then why did that make up 40% of clothing sales last year? It just make sense. These brands will donate these clothes in bulk to clear up space on warehouse floors for the next pile of shit that won't sell either because they mass produced it. And on top of that, these clothes are more likely to hit the thrift racks than the stuff that's out the back donated by the people. Because, I mean, it makes sense, right? They're brand new clothes. They're not some stinky third-hand pieces of garbage. Am I right, guys?
From these brands, I expect like stuff that's been donated from people, I don't know, like thrift store stuff. So, I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of this thrift store. If you're looking for this kind of stuff, then I say go there. But honestly, I was just kind of like, they should change the name at this point. It's not really a thrift store. It's more like an outlet. Like, they probably need to pay some taxes on this because, girl, or maybe not because it's still donated. So, I don't know. Also, you're not allowed to try on clothes here. They have like one fitting room, which the line was super long, and I wasn't seeing it move, so I just didn't try on my other stuff because the security was like, yeah, just so sorry, you can't try it on.
Interestingly enough, something that I found out whilst filming this video is that a lot of thrift stores are turning into outlets due to these stupid ass fast fashion brands producing clothes in excess. Whatever doesn't sell is wasting valuable space on the warehouse floor is dumped to these thrifts that in turn turn against the people instead of being there for them. That is what thrift stores were originally, to be the option for the people who didn't have any left because they didn't have the funds, and these people buying secondhand was the best option for them because buying something brand new is something that they just are not in a position to afford, nor do they have the resources for that. Yet thrifts are turning into the same vultures as these soulless corporations. Because I mean, look at me in my half-blind eyes and tell me, what the f*** do you mean that this woman couldn't try on clothes that were donated to a thrift store? With the way this is all going, I'm gonna have to eat my boogers for breakfast tomorrow, guys. Like, even a H&M will let you go into a dressing room and try something on. Because it's one thing having a changing room and there are multiple people lined up waiting to try on the clothes that they're about to spend a lot of money on. But like, what do you mean she was told off for trying on a jacket? Guys, this is a thrift store. Who do these thrifts think they are? Seriously, like, I thought you guys were there for the people who didn't have a lot to begin with, but now that thrifting's popular, now that everyone loves to thrift, we're gonna be snobby about it. Okay. You know, if I learned that any of the thrifts that I thrift at acted like this, immediate cease of my presence in there, I tell you that much. And it's not like these thrifts are even paying for these excess clothes to be donated to them specifically. No, it's because brands want to have a clear conscience at the end of the day so that everyone can clap and be like, oh my God, they did such a good thing by donating and not, you know, giving to landfill. And it's like, it was gonna go there anyways. So not only is the consumer dumping their mistakes onto thrifts, but the brands themselves are too. And I guess from a different standpoint as well, I think it's really sad because with brands like Princess Polly, Boohoo, Fashion Nova, Shein, we're not really going to be seeing anything from the pre-2010s soon enough inside of thrifts because it'll all be overrun by these shitty ass clothes. I wouldn't really have much against them. I wouldn't really have much against Zara or H&M and whatnot if they weren't using shitty labor practices, if they weren't producing their clothes in excess, knowing that so much of it isn't going to sell, if they weren't using motherfucking plastic for every piece of clothing they sell on these damn websites. I mean, it'll be vintage Shein for sake. And I don't know, man, that makes me a little upset for the future of the next generation of thrifters because, you know, the art of buying long-lasting and sustainable clothing is kind of out of fashion at this current point. And I mean, I get it to some degree. I don't want to be some classist dickhead sat here being like, I wonder why people are buying, you know, fast fashion and not these $80 pair of pants. Like, I get it. I get what the current state of the economy is looking like. And I really hate it when people are like, well, just go thrift. Babes, you can't just go thrift right now because not only are thrifts absolutely flooded with fast fashion, which isn't really their fault to begin with, that's all they're getting in donations, but they themselves are pricing it way beyond its worth.
Thing just does not hit like it used to for me in the sense of the Goodwill, Salvation Army, Savers type thrift stores. Because I mean, you put me in a curated thrift store, you put me at a flea market, on eBay, oh, I'm booked and busy, or I'm having the time of my fucking life. But one of my favorite things to do used to be, especially going into fall, like an overcast, chilly fall day, get myself a little iced coffee, go into the thrift store, AirPods in, tune in the rest of the world out, and just seeing what the thrift gods have to deliver to me. And over the past, I'd say 2 years, what they've been prominently delivering is fast fashion bullshit. Recent fast fashion bullshit, I should say, because for so long, like, the popular brands of like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s that were like the fast fashion of that time were what I was mainly seeing at thrift stores, but I didn't mind because it felt miles ahead in quality of like the stuff that I'm seeing now. Sometimes I go into a Goodwill and I'm like, oh, did I like misturn or like misread this sign? Because I feel like I'm into Zara. So much Zara. Shein, obviously, Fashion Nova, Cider, even like Urban Outfitters, Princess Polly, and it's stuff that was popular a year ago, and I didn't want it then. I don't want it now.
The problem as well with fast fashion being 60 to 70% of the clothing we see at a thrift is that it is micro trends from anywhere between a month ago and a whole year ago. Clothes that a lot of people did not want at that time and still don't want it today because they're micro trends. They're social media clothes. They're not clothes that somebody actually likes and actually enjoys wearing. And I mean, you know, there is probably, I want to acknowledge, there is probably somebody who is watching it that is like, you know, I actually really enjoyed the pink Lily Rose Depp cowgirl hats. I mean, great for you, babes, but most people are just, they're not wearing that shit today because they themselves understand that that's not their style. They're wearing it for a specific purpose, and that is to look trendy on social media. I mean, that is why fast fashion brands are able to sell a lot of clothes, constantly pumping out the next micro trend. Not to mention the fact, of course, that the clothes are so cheap. And in an economy like this, you know, sometimes people don't have a choice, regardless of their morals and whatnot. I mean, personally, for me, I'm not going to buy fast fashion, but we have to acknowledge why they're so popular. We already know that fast fashion sucks and that nobody should be buying it, period. But the people who are trying to curate a wardrobe on a budget, hence why a lot of people tend to turn to fast fashion websites. Why should I feel almost pressured into buying somebody's obsession with being the most trendy on TikTok? I'm sorry, I am just not going to bear the load of somebody's stupid purchase mistake. Because the whole reason that people are donating them to begin with is because there is that level of awareness that you have where you're like, I know I shouldn't have bought this in the first place. I knew I shouldn't have supported fast fashion. And I know what these companies are doing in the shadows. But, you know, throwing a perfectly fine piece of clothing in the bin feels too much. So I'm just going to push that onto thrifts. And that also just, in my honest opinion, isn't okay, because with any purchase that you make, you should think about it a little bit more than a fleeting thought. And you're like, okay, because I have this website in my hand right now, I'm just going to go buy it. Like, practice consciously consuming, especially with clothing, so that we don't end up in positions like this. Because the truth is, with every fast fashion purchase made, it's completely and utterly useless. Try a thrift first, because you know where you'll find an endless supply of that stuff before even clicking onto shein.com? That's right, at your local thrift. But maybe not. Maybe not. It's not even cheaper than buying it brand new. Because, you know, unfortunately, most people aren't interested in buying something that's sole purpose was for a micro trend. Like, what the fuck can I even wear with this, Veronica? Seriously?
And I'm just like, is this what the world has come to? I don't know if it's also like the popularity of apps like eBay and Poshmark and Depop that's making people who have really good like vintage realize like, oh, I can try and sell this, make a little extra money. Why would I donate it, right? Or if it's just like, this is the consequences of fast fashion becoming increasingly popular, especially over the last decade. And now something that used to bring me so much comfort just brings me great distress.
I don't necessarily think that the popularization of secondhand purchasing apps such as Depop, Vinted, Poshmark has really much to do with the fact that we aren't seeing great clothing inside of a thrift. Because let me just tell you, I grew out a lot of my stuff from when I was around 17, 18, and a lot of that stuff, most, if not all of it, was great clothing. Because, you know, I wanted people who have a similar sense of style to mine, if not the exact same, to have their magical thrifting moment. Because whenever I find something, you know, like this, or like this that I found at a thrift, I felt so like I have been blessed by the gods of thrifting. And a while back, I was talking to one of my elder goth friends, and she was donating a whole bunch of stuff to a thrift that was really great 90s goth brand stuff. And it, you know, there are still so many people out there who don't care about reselling their clothes for a profit. You know, if you want to sell the clothes in your wardrobe because you need money, there is really nothing wrong in that. And I don't really like the fact that people make others feel bad for not donating it because, oh my god, I want to have my cool magical thrifting moment. The reason apps like Depop and Poshmark are so popular at the moment is because it's one of the only places you can find great secondhand clothes without having to waste the time moving from rack to rack, coat hanger to coat hanger, only just to come across really nothing other than a shitty boohoo top that you're like, you know, the seams are gonna break if I eat too much this week. Buying good quality clothing at the moment is going to cost you, whereas it costs pretty much nothing getting shit off of a fast fashion website. In the 2000s as well, social media didn't really exist for the most part, and it wasn't such an ever-present thing we use in our day-to-day lives in this society, which means micro trends were not a thing back then. There was no clean goth, fairy core, or 2020 alt. It was just, what kind of clothes can we make that looks similar to either on the runway or what the cool people are wearing, you know, the taste makers in Hollywood or whatnot. It's so miserable that these clothes are priced to oblivion, blocking the more than likely sales they would have made had thrifts priced fast fashion at fast fashion prices. I'm sorry, but I kind of refuse to go out of my way to purchase fast fashion secondhand when it costs more than what you would get it from the fast fashion brand themselves. And look, am I glad that these clothes aren't just going straight into the garbage and at least somebody is trying to give them a second, third, fifth, fourth life? Yes. But they may as well be in the garbage if they are going to be priced like this, because it's going to be years until there's not even years, like they're just going to sit there and collect dust. Nobody's going to buy that shit. And again, that's not really to say that people aren't going out there and buying secondhand fast fashion, because that definitely exists. And I encourage people to do that if it is at a reasonable price. Like personally for Shein, I think that it should be 99 cents a piece. I don't really believe in selling a runway top that, you know, its zipper might snap in the next week for $25. Like that is just not happening. Message to thrifts, your product isn't going to move when it comes to fast fashion if you're not pricing it correctly. So with all of that being said, everybody, I want to know if I have any thrift employees in the audience. I mean, could we possibly get a little bit of insight as to why fast fashion pieces are priced so high at the moment? Like, I just don't really understand it. Please let me know your thoughts and comments down in the comment section below, or email me at dramakweensubmissions@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your time at Yappersville today, everybody. I cannot wait to see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves, and most of all, love your fucking selves. Staring contest, you lost.